Fresh from the showcase here at SwissWatchExpo, today we're talking about white gold sport model Rolexes and what's not to love about that. So, fresh from the showcase here, this is for those of you who have been keeping an eye on our new arrivals on the website. And as you know, we've got an absolutely bonkers selection of sport model Rolexes. And what better way to exhibit that by just showcasing some of the really hard to find models we have specifically in white gold. I was very taken aback by the sheer variety of white gold models in our new arrivals page. And I really had to show all these to you because a lot of you watch nerds and Rolex heads out there have probably either been looking at or looking for a watch like this, and they are very, very difficult to find. And that, of course, makes these very valuable pieces, not just because they are sport models in white gold, but because their production numbers are relatively low compared to the already incredibly throttled production of Rolex sport watches. Everybody knows that the stainless steel models are nearly impossible to find. These are that much rare. So I would submit to you that we are the only dealer online or otherwise that have all four of these different types of models for sale at any given time, such as now. And with the holidays approaching, that's definitely something to keep in mind if you've got your eye on that special grail piece, because I'm sure some of these are grail watches to some of you. So let's just go ahead and get into these. These are some that you're probably familiar with, but are looking for the opportunity to see up close. I'm going to talk about one of the most popular, the most talked about, and the most requested Rolex sport models. This is the white gold Oysterflex Yacht-Master. Now in 2015, Rolex released this model in rose gold at 40 millimeters, and it was an absolute smash hit. Much like this one was. The first time Rolex ever made a factory rubber bracelet. It is incredibly comfortable and incredibly stylish, and particularly putting it on the Yachtmaster is an interesting choice. This is not meant to be an actual diver's watch. It is sort of a diver's design watch, but it doesn't exactly function the same way a Submariner does. So putting a real utilitarian tool strap on a watch like the Yachtmaster is a bit of an unusual choice, but this is also the type of watch where Rolex really gets to sort of flex their creative muscles a little bit. It's not quite a heritage piece like the Submariner is, so they get real creative with these Yachtmasters. And the Oysterflex is one of my favorite examples. So of course, a few years after the rose gold model, which was such a big hit, they released the white gold model in 2019. And this is a 42 millimeter watch, so they actually beefed up the case a little bit and of course made it exclusively in white gold in that size. And it is absolutely gorgeous. It is not just the rubber bracelet, which is again super comfortable, super convenient, and very practical. But one of my favorite things that they did with both of these models is the matte black Cerachrome insert. This is hands down my favorite aesthetic feature on this watch, and I just love matte black in things like cars, and really if matte black paint on just about anything you can paint, I think looks incredible. And of course, this solid matte finish on this Cerachrome insert looks so incredibly cool and surprisingly dressy for what is a really large, really sporty watch like this. You do have the oversized markers, I think made even larger, considering this is a 42 millimeter case. So this is a lume that's going to glow very bright and very strong, which is something that I think is great for, sort of the aesthetic quality of a dive watch, even if the Yachtmaster isn't the most practical. And as I said for my precious metal sports watch videos we did a few weeks ago, these are not watches to be dived in. Even though they can, does not mean you should. This is an incredibly valuable piece. It needs to be kept in pristine condition. I don't really ever see these looking too rough here at SwissWatchExpo. They are always watches that are going to be cared for very carefully, and that's going to go for all of these. Now, the next one I wanted to go for is another one that Rolex fans are probably very aware of. We're talking about the Smurf. The Smurf is a very, very bright blue dial and bezel against this white gold finish. This is something that only comes in white gold. You do get a blue dial with the two-tone, but really a completely different watch when you look at it against a solid color. If you could compare this side by side to just a two-tone ceramic Submariner compared to just what the same type of color blue in this dial and bezel does just against this all white gold finish, it looks incredibly, icy, really cold weather type of vibes, real Christmas special type stuff. This is a very winter type of aesthetic for me, and that's what I love about it. It is so similar. It's really using sort of the same parts and the same color that they do for the blues and the ceramic, but it just takes on a completely different type of look when it's just against a monochromatic case and bracelet. Otherwise, this is a 40 millimeter ceramic sub. This was only available in this sort of line, and it is an incredibly desirable watch. People call for these, and they are really tough to find. Even as hard as, you know, the steel sports watches go, watches and models like the Smurfs are even that much harder to find. And of course, they do go for a premium, but they are absolutely stunning. This being a mint condition watch with box and card, that's going to go for all of these that I'm showing you, by the way. So these make incredible investments. I know everybody talks about how great an investment steel sports watches are, and that is definitely still the case. I mean, nothing is appreciating in value like a ceramic, you know, steel Daytona is, for example. But these are still absolutely incredible watches that are nearly impossible to find, and as such are set to absolutely skyrocket in value in the future. So keep that in mind. These are not just very delicate and gorgeous white gold pieces. These are investments, and no better example than this white gold Daytona. We've got another blue dial here, which again, I think looks so great with sort of the cool type of aesthetic, much like the Smurf here. And again, much like the other steel Daytonas, this is a watch that is nearly impossible to find. I know there was a time when we got a lot of calls that we could not field these requests for, but now we actually have this watch in stock, and we are super happy to be able to show it to you. This is a gorgeous blue dial, and note the very subtle red accents on the inside of the subdials here. That is just the right amount of warm color to really give this watch sort of a more dynamic look than the Smurf does. But of course, with any chronograph dial, you're going to have a lot more going on here and a lot more opportunity to play with different colors and different designs. Another thing is you will see the sort of insert here on the bezel. A little harder to read than the ceramics or even the steel models, but again, much like the Yachtmaster, much like this Submariner, this is not really a practical sporting watch. If so, you probably wouldn't be looking for it in white gold, but it is a classic looking chronograph. And with the sheer weight of holding this white gold case and bracelet in your hands, you really know you got something valuable. And it's not just because it's a Daytona, it's because of the weight of this as well. And the last one I wanted to show to you, possibly the most unique, because this is probably the one I'm less familiar with, and as such, quite possibly the rarest, is the white gold Pepsi GMT that we have here. One thing you'll notice with the white gold sport models is that Rolex will get creative with the case colors, and you will get case colors that you won't be able to find on any of the steel models. So for example, as opposed to the black dial that you get with the steel Pepsi, and that's kind of been the case since the GMT has been around, or since the Pepsi bezel was introduced, this actually has a blue which does sort of match the color on the top half of this bezel here, which is really unique. I've not seen the GMT do sort of that with their color aesthetic before, and I do think it is fascinating. And that's one of the things that the second I set eyes on it, I was like, what is that GMT? I'm not even familiar with it. Well, that's because it's the white gold model, and I had not seen it before. So this is a very rare watch, and it is an incredible blue color here, a bit less cold and icy than the other two. Here, this is a bit more of a matted finish, a little closer to a navy blue because it's matching the top half of this Pepsi bezel, but it is incredibly striking. And as someone who's very familiar with the GMT and sees a lot of these, you really notice the difference the first time you set your eyes on this thing in white gold. Like so many of the others compared to their steel counterparts, they are so incredibly similar and yet so incredibly different where it counts. And that goes for all of these. So any one of these would make both incredible investments, incredible additions to anyone's Rolex collection, because I'm sure you can't have that many rose gold or white gold watches in your collection. And of course, fantastically rare pieces that are really going to impress any of the watch collecting or watch appreciating aficionados in your life or otherwise. Of course, we don't just have the super rare watches, although with the way the market's going, all Rolexes might be considered super rare soon, but we also have a ton of different luxury timepieces for a variety of budgets, and each day inches us closer and closer to Christmas. So if this is on someone's list, do not let it get away from you. They are only going to get harder to find in the future. So give us a call and let's help you get one at SwissWatchExpo.com.